Something quite interesting and incriminating has just come to light. It appears that the January 6th committee has been deleting or destroying its own documents and records. We suspected, I did, I think you did also, that this January 6th committee was a sham. It was a propaganda operation led by, well, Nancy Pelosi was its guiding spirit, but Benny Thompson, Liz Cheney, they were putting out a one-sided view of what happened with selected images, carefully crafted interviews, suppressing information that was inconvenient to their side. And all of this is now coming to light. Representative Barry Loudermilk of Georgia wrote to the January 6th committee, and he said, send us the documents that you have so we can review them as part of our routine congressional oversight. And it turns out the January 6th committee is not supplying all these documents. When Representative Loudermilk pressed Benny Thompson, he goes, well, he says in effect, I'm not obliged to give them all to you. I don't have to give you all the documents. Here, we've given you a bunch of stuff, and that's kind of all we're going to give you, even though the law requires, A, the January 6th committee to preserve the documents, and B, to turn them over when they are requested or are demanded by a legitimate investigation. Now, Congressman Loudermilk goes on to say, we looked at the documents that they gave us, and none of it really was even organized. Quote, nothing was indexed. There was no table of contents. Usually when you conduct a level of investigation, you use a database system. Everything is digitized, indexed. We've got nothing like that. We just got raw data. And I realized, quote, we don't have anything much at all from the blue team. Now, what's the blue team? Well, the blue team was a special team convened by the January 6th committee to look at security failures that might have contributed to what happened on January 6th. Think about it. There was a lot of intelligence that federal agencies had, that lots of people are coming to town. There have been some threats. There are people threatening to go into the Capitol. So, hey, we need to protect against that. But those measures were not taken. In fact, the Capitol Police weren't even properly notified about what these threats were. At least that according to Mr. Sund, the head of the Capitol Police, in a recent book. So the blue team was going to look at all this. And yet, the records of the blue team appeared to have been erased. Because, according to Loudermilk, the January 6th committee didn't want to hear from the blue team. They shut up the blue team. At one point, I think Liz Cheney was the one who had been accused of saying, we want to make this all about Trump. We don't want to make this about security failures. We don't need to get into all of that. So this is the way in which a propaganda operation suppresses truth, by saying, let's only look over here, because if we look over here, it'll bring out facts inconvenient to the narrative that we're trying to put out over here. And then says Representative Loudermilk, we're not seeing anything from the blue team as far as reports on the investigation. What we also realized we didn't have was videos of all the depositions. So the blue team took a bunch of depositions from security officials, and those depositions have not been turned over to the House GOP. And so, what is now becoming really clear is that the J6 committee was working closely with the Biden administration to craft a narrative. At one point, the House GOP found a letter that was sent by Benny Thompson to a guy named Richard Sauber. Richard Sauber is the attorney for Joe Biden. He's the attorney also for DHS. And the letter referred to, quote, an agreement, some sort of an agreement that was made between the January 6th committee and the Biden administration. So think about it. The January 6th committee, supposed to be this independent congressional committee, supposed to be bipartisan, looking at what really happened. They're making backdoor agreements with the Biden regime about, listen, we're going to send you some information for you to review. You're going to tell us. So they're collaborating on the public narrative that the January 6th committee is putting out. Again, this is all exposing this as a highly ideological, partisan, and propagandistic operation. And once again, these documents, the communications between Benny Thompson, between the January 6th committee, between Liz Cheney and her gang, and the people in the Biden administration, where are those communications? Representative Loudermilk is like, we don't have them. So this is nothing more than, you talk about obstruction of an investigation, refusing to turn over documents. Now, all of this is facilitated by the media because you're hearing it from me. Have you seen a bunch of articles about this? Have you heard it being talked about, even on Fox News? Have you heard it been talked about anywhere? Is there an outrage about it? Are the networks covering it on the daily news? Not at all. So what the media does here, a very important part of our media is to suppress things, not just to expose things. They like to expose certain things, but just as important as what they cover and the biased way in which they cover things is the very careful way in which things are screened out. So I guess what I'm saying is that the very erasure of facts by the January 6th committee is mirrored by an equivalent erasure by the mainstream media. Hey, if aches and pains are your problem, Relief Factor is your remedy. Debbie and I started taking Relief Factor a couple of years ago. The difference we've seen in our joints, nothing short of amazing. Aches and pains are totally gone thanks to this 100% drug-free solution called Relief Factor. How does it work? Relief Factor supports your body's fight against inflammation. That's the source of aches and pains. The vast majority of people who try Relief Factor become regular customers. They order more because it works for them. Debbie's a true believer. She can now do exercises, planks, push-ups, and so on that for several years she wasn't able to do. So Relief Factor has been a big game changer for her, her aunt, other members of our family, Mike here in the studio, and for many other people. You too can benefit. Try it for yourself. Order the 3-week quick start for the discounted price of just $19.95. Go to relieffactor.com or call 800-4-RELIEF to find out more about this offer. The number again, 800-4-RELIEF, or go to relieffactor.com. Feel the difference.